to a subject which I hinted about in the last vlog, specifically to do with the question as to why I haven't modified my car to make it corner more quickly, toughening up the suspension and stuff like that. The reasons for this are very simple: cost and practicality. And while practicality is a very beige term, a very boring term, it's true. Having such beefed up suspension for the car and lowering the ride height of the car is useful for the racetrack, not for the road where you have speed bumps and tall curbs and stuff like that. Can you imagine going over a speed bump, and indeed I've seen this happen in real life, going over a speed bump in a car with significantly lowered suspension? They're like creaking over the speed bumps because they can just barely get over them. No, I'll leave my car, my road car that is, the way it is, because that way it can get over speed humps easily but without being daft. So yeah, I'll leave it as it is. But there's also the cost factor. It costs way too much to modify the suspension, only to ultimately in the real world go slower. There's no point, in my opinion. I'm not kidding when I talk about this, because one time when I was making my way back from getting one or two bits, I was stuck behind someone in a modified car who blasted forwards in between speed humps, stood on the brakes, and then crawled, and I do not use that word lightly, crawled over the speed hump. And I could see the exhaust pipe on their car that was probably wider than a Lamborghini Murcielago's exhaust. It was ridiculously large. All it succeeded in doing was making it like a trumpet. It was ridiculous. Yeah, I could see the exhaust pipe wiggling around, with it even just crawling over the speed hump, and I couldn't help chuckle behind it. I was like, yeah. I thought, how do you feel now, sort of thing. For those asking what a difference beefing up the suspension makes to the cornering, the key when going around a corner quickly is to keep the tyre in as much contact with the tarmac as possible, or the road holding, if you will. The problem with doing that on a road car is very simple, and it is felt on the human body. Basically, as you go over a bump, say the gap between the tarmac and a manhole cover, for example, there's very little give in the suspension, and as such the shock is transferred to the body of the human through the car. So it's like sort of thing. And if you do that very often, before very long, you'll need to go to an osteopath to deal with back problems, let's be kind. So it's not very appealing.